Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our regular council meeting for Monday, November the 27th. Obviously, we're meeting virtually tonight, but the meeting is being broadcast live as well as being recorded, and a link of the meeting will be available on the town's website for future viewing. Before we get started, if you're able, I would ask that you stand and join us for the playing of our national anthem. We would like to begin by respectfully acknowledging that the town of Shelburne resides within the traditional territory and ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, Chippewa, and the people of the Three Fires Confederacy. These traditional territories upon which we live, work, play, and learn are steeped in rich Indigenous history and traditions. And it is with this statement that we declare to honor and respect the past and present connection of Indigenous peoples with this land, its waterways, and resources. And we encourage residents to review the call to action information, which can be found by visiting the websites which are listed on the town's website. Just a reminder for members to declare any pecuniary interest that they may have. I have one tonight. It's item number 6.1.1. The applicant is a client of mine, so I will be stepping aside at that point, and the deputy mayor will assume the chair for that item. Anybody else? No. Okay. All right. Can I have a motion then to approve the minutes from our regular meeting held November the 13th? Moved by Councillor Sample, seconded by Councillor Fegan. Any discussion on those? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. All right, were there any questions submitted for question period?
No, sir, no questions.
Okay. All right, council inquiries. Councillor Sample.
I just have a couple. I'm just wondering if we can do anything about the wheelchair parking at the TD Bank. I've had a few people come to me and say that parking has not been available because of people using it as not a wheelchair, and they don't have wheelchair stickers and stuff. So I don't know if we can get bylaw to do some preliminary checks on that or not. Second one is across the crosswalk at Park and Robert. I know Councillor Bonato has brought it up in the past. I received a call, so I went and monitored. I went and actually sat there for probably almost an hour watching the traffic and watching the people cross, and it is quite busy, and there is no stop there. I know we have a sign there that says crosswalk, but I'm just wondering if we can get someone from staff to take a look at that area to see if we can put a crossing guard there. So I know Councillor Bonato's had a few people report on that too. So I got a call this last week about it. So, and I'm not sure, but I did have an inquiry about unassumed roads in town that we don't, in the new subdivisions part. And ticketing parking. So if they're unassumed by us, can we still ticket? I don't know the answer to that. So I was hoping someone can clarify that if they can in any of those items.
Okay, Jennifer?
Yes, thank you, through your worship. I can tell you that the accessible parking spot at the TD Bank is monitored on a frequent basis and tickets are being issued. And as for the unassumed roads, because the town maintains them for snow clearing purposes, yes, we can issue parking tickets.
Okay.
Okay. And in terms of the crosswalk, Jim?
Through your worship, I did look into that intersection there when Councillor Bernardo brought it up. We do have very good sight lines there for the curvature of the road that's in there at a 50 or a 40. It's the same standard 65 meters of sightline distance to allow the vehicle to see a person, see a vehicle, and then stop to a dead stop. So we do have well over that. It was almost 200 meters in the one direction, I think, looking to the west, and approximately the same going the other way. So sightline wise, we do have the more than proper sightlines there. I know there was a request for a stop sign there. I did send the resident, I believe I sent it to council too, just the assessment there that it wouldn't apply for the stop sign policy that we do have under Book 5 in MTO's traffic books. Stop signs aren't supposed to be used as a speed control device or anything like that. So it didn't warrant that for a stop sign in that area as well.
So what about potentially a crossing guard, Denise?
So I know I had told council repeatedly, and I apologize, that we were going to bring our traffic calming report tonight. We've just been working on a couple of other issues with respect to that report. So that's coming on December 11th. And as Jim mentioned, while using stop signs as a traffic calming device or speed monitoring use is not recommended. Through Jennifer, as the crossing guards are part of her team, we can certainly review the data that Jim has mentioned and see whether or not a crossing guard location is warranted there, but we would just need to do a more thorough assessment of that. And if there's anything else with respect to the process, Jennifer can add.
Through your worship, just one more thing is to provide data for that. It would be best if residents reached out to us directly so that we can create that work order and that request that adds to the need and the necessity for in regards to trying to determine if one is warranted for that area.
Okay, Councillor Bernardo?
A lot of the kids that come out of the subdivision to the south that go to Glenbrook School cross over at Robertson Park. And I think that's what Councillor Sample was referring to. It is quite extreme. If you sit there early in the morning and at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you will see a stream of children crossing, mothers with strollers and whatnot, crossing that area. It is almost as busy as where we have crossing guards up at Fiddle Park and Park Avenue and those areas there, because that's the southern route that they take to go to Glenbrook, the same as we have the other route at the north end when they come up from the Lakeview subdivision. And then they go down Park all the way and cross over at the north end.
Yeah. Denise?
Thanks, Mayor Mill. So we'll certainly review them based on the comments that you provided to us on the necessity for a crossing guard to be added to that location. As council is aware, we did in the 2024 draft budget, which you've approved by law. It's the only thing outstanding. The addition of a number of crossing guards in that budget. So we would have to review that again and come back to you with any expected cost to add an additional location.
Okay. All right. Any other inquiries? Councillor Sample?
Just to follow up on the crossing guard in that area if possible. I can talk to a number of the parents in that area because I did have conversations when the black truck and an old guy sitting in his truck watching the crosswalk. So I did have quite conversations with a lot of people in that area. And there it is quite busy. Even though the sign is there, this is crosswalk, no one stops for anybody. The kids are just watching traffic flows. So it changes throughout the time frame of the different days in the week too. So but just so you guys are aware of that too. So I will talk to some of the parents to put in requests too.
Okay, perfect. All right, anything else? No? Okay. All right, well, that takes us into our first item under items for consideration, and this is the item that I have an interest in, so I will bow out and turn it over to Deputy Mayor Hall.
Again, the first item under 6.1 is a report P 2023-19 from the town planner regarding consent agreement for application B21-05 for residential lot severance at 220 Owen Sound Street. So I'll hand it over to our planner.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Hall. Can you hear me okay? All right, good evening, everybody. As the Deputy Mayor mentioned, there is a copy of my report in your agenda package. This application was originally approved by the Committee of Adjustment back in October of 2022, but you saw it more recently as council when we considered the zoning application in July of this year. So just as a reminder of the location, this is the existing residential property at the southwest corner of Owen Sound Street and 2nd Avenue West. There is an existing historic home on the property that's being converted to a 3-unit dwelling. And at the back of the property along 2nd Avenue, there is an existing detached garage. The owner has received provisional approval to sever that back portion, which will require removal of the garage, and he intends to build a new single detached home on that provisionally severed lot. One of the requirements in order to undertake that development is to enter into an agreement with the town. It's kind of like a miniature subdivision agreement just for this one lot that is proposed. And the owner has provided more details about the proposed development of that severed lot, including a copy of the draft reference plan, a lot grading and siting plan showing the approximate dimensions and location of the new home, and an image that illustrates kind of the design intent. It's an example home design. It's not necessarily the literal exact home that will be built, but it's provided both for council and was provided to the Heritage Committee as well for review. One of the sensitivities, of course, of the area is that it is fairly historic. Many of the homes are much older. And so when you build a new modern home in these older neighborhoods, you want to ensure it fits with the look and style of the homes as much as possible, recognizing colors, materials, and so forth change over time. It's also to make sure that the home is reasonably sized for the size of the lot and appropriately sited. And I think the owner's done a good job of illustrating that for our purposes here. He hasn't confirmed the timing yet. The consent agreement, it would be one further step towards the development. If it's approved tonight by council, that would provide the framework for the owner to do the servicing of the lot, make some changes to the servicing of the existing lot as well. So they'll have to reroute the sanitary sewer along 2nd Avenue to the existing home so that it doesn't run through the severed lot. And it requires the owner to abide by the town's requirements for the servicing and grading of the lot. Also to abide by some design guidelines that are proposed. We've started to include these design guidelines in these infill lot severances in historic neighborhoods. It was included in the requirements for 250 Main Street, for example, where a new home's been approved on the back of that property. And the intent, again, is to make sure that the design of the homes is properly integrated with the historic neighborhood. You'll see attached to the report, there's a copy of the lot grading and siting plan. You'll also see there's the image of the proposed home and the Heritage Committee comments, which really focused on materials and colors. We have relayed those comments to the owner and have included in the agreement that the owner is required to consider those comments in the final design. So once we have an application for building permit after the lot severance is complete, we'll be checking for these things. It's not necessarily the case that he has to do identically what the Heritage Committee has requested, but we would look for something that meets the intent of what's requested here. The authorizing bylaw as well as the proposed draft agreement are also attached. The agreement is pretty standard. This is the same template or form of agreement that we've used elsewhere, again with the add-on of the design guidelines in Schedule B, which we're applying now in the historic neighborhoods. So that's my presentation. Happy to take any questions should you have any. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Do we have any questions for the planner? The owner is online as well, I see, so if needed, we can certainly reach towards him as well. Okay, seeing that we have no questions, I do have the recommendation. So it is, be it resolved that council receive report P 2023-16 as information, and be it resolved that bylaw 64-2023 being a bylaw to enter into a consent agreement with Jeff Hamilton for land located at 220 Owen Sound Street, substantially in the form attached to the bylaw and initialed by the clerk for identification, be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed. Do I have a mover? Moved by Mr. Gashardi. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Mr. Fegan. All in favor? Okay, unanimous. Thank you very much. And we'll now bring the mayor back in.
All right, thank you. The next report is a report from our Director of Financial Services Treasurer regarding our asset retirement obligation policy. So Carrie, I'll kind of let you introduce this.
Sure. Thank you. And through the mayor, this report is introducing a new policy for the town that we haven't had before. And it's a requirement of the Public Sector Accounting Board standards, and it takes effect for 2023. The practice itself is not entirely new. We've always accounted for our landfill post-closure liability. But what this new standard is proposing is that it includes all of our capital assets, whether or not we recognize that they have some type of disposal cost yet or not. So with this policy, it just gives staff and the auditors the opportunity to, at year end, to identify anything that may be required to set up a liability for. It doesn't affect our cash budget. It's a balance sheet item, and you'll only hear and see tell of it when the financial statements are presented by the auditors. And you will remember earlier in the year, we did actually assign an RFP to a company that came in and looked at all of the town's buildings to assess them for asbestos and any other hazards that may fall under this disposal policy's requirements. So we do have that report back. We just haven't sat down as a team yet to review it to determine if there is any liabilities that we will be setting up at the end of the year with the auditors. So other than that, it's fairly straightforward, and it is regulatory, so we don't really have a choice. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
All right, questions for Carrie? The county just went through a similar exercise as well, so Deputy Mayor and I kind of knew that this was coming, but no questions? All right. Can I have a motion then to receive the report and to adopt the policy? By Councillor Sample, seconded by Councillor Wagner. All in favor? It's carried. All right, next is a bylaw to adopt the estimates for the sums required during the year 2024 for general and water sewer purposes. Carrie, do you want to give a quick highlight as to why we do this?
Sure. So now that council has seen the council presentation and the public presentation, we just have to ratify it with a bylaw. And this bylaw also includes, in accordance with public sector accounting requirements, it includes the accrual-based budget as well as the cash-based budget that council adopted. And as far as the numbers go, nothing's changed. This is still a 5% increase in the tax rate and a 9% increase in the levy.
Is there a mover and seconder for this bylaw? Councillor Fegan, seconded by Councillor Guichardi. All in favor? That's carried.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks, Carrie. Next is a resolution from our Canada Day Committee looking to rescind a bylaw. Councillor Fegan, do you want to speak to this?
This is in regards to the sound bylaw, if I remember correctly. Is that correct?
Seems to be about charging vendors, but a licensing charge.
Yes. Oh, okay. So yes, we were looking to have the vendors, it's essentially the vendor cost. If somebody were from out of town to pay the same cost as somebody who is in town.
Okay. Okay. And that's a specific bylaw, like to this event? Jennifer or Alice, do you happen to?
Through your worship, the bylaw indicates that it's for special events within the town. So the way the bylaw reads is that it would apply to the Canada Day event, so that any outside vendors from the town of Shelburne, because they don't have a business license, would have to pay this fee. But the Canada Day Committee is charging a fee to all vendors.
Okay.
So this bylaw requires vendors from outside of Shelburne to have to pay twice.
Okay.
So the committee is just looking, it's the bylaw specifically was for Street Fest originally, which is an event that's not held anymore. But because it does indicate other special events, it is still in force.
Okay. All right. Thoughts from the group? Councillor Bernardo?
To me, it makes sense that we remove it. They have a hard enough time as it is bringing in vendors, having them pay once to them $100 and turn around and pay another additional $100 after that to come to an event. If I was a vendor, I wouldn't come. I would say the heck with it. That's costing me $200 to get there. I don't know if I'll make $200 at the end of the day to walk out of there with any profit. So it's just making things very difficult for them to get the vendors to come in. I can understand why they want to remove it. And, you know, if it was just the $100 being paid to the town, not the committee, that makes, because there's no business, it kind of makes sense. But the case is that the Canada Day Committee is collecting the $100 to begin with for all of them, whether you're in or out. and then to turn around and have the outside pay an additional 100 does not make sense. So I agree, remove it. Let's get rid of it. Let them have the ability to bring in the people, at least the Canada Day committee's getting some money. It's still coming in $100. The fee is still being paid one way or the other.
Do you want to make a motion to that effect then?
Sure, I'll make a motion that the bylaw be rescinded for the Canada Day committee for the bylaw 30-207 be rescinded for the Canada Day Festival.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Councillor Wagner, are you seconding it? Okay.
And I also have a quick question.
Sure.
Would this rescind it for all special events then as well?
I was just going to ask staff if there's a way that we can do that.
Yeah, because I get the point behind it, but yeah, it's so hard to get vendors for events now, and as it is, if it's run on town property, they also have to come with insurance. So, you know, we're just getting over that hump now of vendors being accepting of at least providing the insurance. To have, you know, $100 for a permit, it will never see any.
I think if we rescind the bylaw, that the bylaw no longer exists. So it just by virtue of that, it applies to any special event. So okay.
Perfect.
And
then yes,
Jennifer,
I will definitely second that.
Okay. Jennifer, is a motion to rescind sufficient then?
We'll most likely have to bring a bylaw back to rescind it.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay. Well, for now, we'll pass a motion to that effect and let's bring back a rescinding bylaw at a later date then. Any further discussion on this? No, all in favor? That's carried. Okay, so the last main item is just some further discussion, which came out of the last meeting regarding the Upper Grand District School Board's boundary review. We had asked staff to maybe do a little bit further research and come back and allow us to then have a more wholesome discussion. And in the meantime, there's been a couple of other developments as well. So Denise, did you want to lead off?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Mills. Other than advising and sharing with council that the meeting that was held on the 22nd last week was moved from Primrose to the high school, and that we understand that they had a high attendance. We were told that it was a public open house format, so I don't believe that there was a formal presentation. I don't think any member of council was in attendance, but please advise if you were. Today, the staff with the board confirmed, the planning staff, that they're in the process of summarizing any questions, comments, or concerns that they received on that night, along with all of their presentation boards that were present and viewed that evening. And they expect to have that information added to their website, in addition to having their updated FAQ completed for next week. So that's really all the information we have, other than the letter from Melanchthon that expressed their concerns. And staff did, and I think some members of council may have watched that, the board meeting, where there were a number of delegations from members of the communities, as well as parents, outlining what they felt were options or non-options. And I also shared that link with the members of council, as well as on the agenda tonight is the motion that came out of that specific board meeting, which was in advance of the meeting on the 22nd. So that's really all I have to share. And I'm sorry we don't have anything more, but it still seems to be a review that's under discussion and in process.
Okay. Other thoughts or comments? Councillor Fegan?
My biggest concern on this, based on the report that came back, is that they're still looking to make their decision by January. The biggest concern with the letter through Melanchthon is that that's not nearly enough time for proper consultation, not only with the parents, but also with the surrounding municipalities. So I still would like to put forward the idea of this council writing our own letter in support of Melanchthon's letter, to look for further consultation, to make sure that the school board is getting all the information that they need and make the proper decision.
Okay. Denise?
So I can speak to that only from having watched the board meeting. And that request was made repeatedly by a number of delegations. The motion that was made reaffirmed that the process was those timelines. And some of the board staff spoke to why that process in terms of time was outlined. I understood that what had to be done is the decision timing influenced their hiring and the adjustments that would need to be made with respect to their staffing at those particular locations. In the absence of that, they would not be able to meet those conditions for planning, as well as what I believe is the funding mechanisms that they have to work with the province as well with. But that, again, I think probably the best summary of some of the considerations that were presented from the board meeting are available by watching the video. And again, I'm trying to answer these third hand, but I think that was one of the critical reasons why when I sent you the motion, or sorry, Jennifer did, I got it as well, that the board had decided that the original timelines were in place.
Do you know if there's been any consultation with our staff, particularly planning staff?
With respect to our engagement with planning, it was more about the accommodation for all schools within the catchment areas, specific to our growth, and them estimating, similar to what they presented to you, where that growth would be coming from. So, for example, we let them know what our AMO delegation had outlined in terms of our capacity issues with the waste treatment plant and how that affected the projections for the development in the Western lands. They're fully aware of the development with obviously from Highland when it came online. Now that Fieldgate is being assumed, they work with us and just in terms of road assumption status, because they also have to coordinate where buses may be entering because they don't drive on unassumed roads. That's really about the extent of our engagement with the board in terms of capacity for population and planning considerations. And Steve can add anything more if he's gone, so he can't.
Okay. And I was just wondering in terms of wastewater capacity specifically.
Yeah, so they are aware of the limitations that we currently have with the wastewater capacity, and that until we resolve the funding challenges with respect to that plant expansion, that the status of the design and engineering is still underway, with it expecting to be completed in Q1 2024. Council is aware that we're still waiting. We are as staff, we're going to coordinate this. We expect to have that front-ending agreement meeting with the developers in December. And I shared with you today the status of the fund that we were hoping might materialize after our AMO delegation for infrastructure, which is not. In addition, FCM released a statement today on, I think the word would be disappointment, with respect to the lack of infrastructure funding that came from the Fed's announcement last week. And that while that funding has some benefit for certain parties, it certainly isn't helping any municipalities address the significant infrastructure gaps that they need, because without that, we cannot provide the services that development requires.
Okay. Councillor Bernardo?
When we're speaking and we're talking about planning, my concern, besides the wastewater plant, they should be talking to us, especially if they're bringing in additional portables into Centennial. I'm not thinking that all of these students that are being moved are going to fit within Centennial and be able to use those particular washrooms only. I'm gathering there has to be some additional portables and whatnot, so there should be some discussion with us in regards to that.
So sorry, I should have clarified. Certainly we did have a meeting with the board staff. I had asked whether or not allocation would be an issue. I thought maybe this was accommodated, but it is not. So this is a conversation that we just recently had. that a significant increase of students from outside of Shelburne would not be within the allocation that we would consider. So if you're a student within Shelburne, you're simply your allocation in your home sort of ports with you, no pun intended. But this is something that they're currently having to assess to ensure that we do not have a significant user increase on the existing capacity before the treatment plant is expanded. So they may have capacity if other schools are underutilized. It may have to get creative in terms of this allocation goes to that particular facility, so it's within their total holding. But that's certainly something that they are reviewing, and we did, myself and Steve, had a meeting with their facilities and planning staff probably 2 weeks ago now.
Okay, Councillor Fegan.
Something I'm still not clear on, and maybe Denise, you can give me some more clarification so that I understand. The report that came back as far as their consideration on building new schools, etc., was based on 110% capacity, if I read that correctly, of on the ground capacity. Can you tell me what their metrics are for the on the ground capacity? Because in that same report that came out to us in email, they also said that portables are not considered part of that on the ground. So I am concerned about that based on not understanding what their metrics are for that.
Thanks for your question, Councillor Fegan, and through the mayor. I'm not informed enough to answer that question. I know within the email I did get confirmation for you. I'm giving your question at the prior meeting exactly what you just stated, and that portables and temporary school is not included in that. I think possibly what I could do tomorrow is follow up with the board staff to have maybe a more fulsome explanation of this for you. I think their funding has to be defined through the provincial requirements in terms of what triggers at the 110% capacity the consideration of an additional school. Through the last or a couple of presentations ago, there was some commentary that there would be an expectation of a fourth elementary school in Shelburne, numbers warranted with the development of the Western lands potentially.
So we're expecting some more reporting from the board next week in terms of their consultation findings. Do you think it's best if we wait until our December 11th meeting? That's 2 weeks tonight, so that will allow us to kind of see what they come back with in terms of their public consultation findings next week. And maybe we'll have a better idea in terms of their direction as well. Does that sound fair? Councillor Fegan?
Sorry, the only concern that I have is I'd like us at some point to make a decision before they make their decision on what they're going to do. Like that's my only concern. I don't mind putting it out, but if they're going to make the decision in January, we should figure out what we're going to do ahead of time. If we're going to support and lengthen with letter, great. If we're not, great. But I think we need to make that decision before the board makes their decision on boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Denise?
So process-wise, you could just indicate that you were copied as the town of Shelburne on the correspondence from the from the township of Melanthon. As councillors, you have heard from many community members who have concerns and are also echoing some of those sentiments, and simply express that while you respect that the process is underway, you want to make the board at this time aware that you have concerns, and you might specifically echo that the process and the timing seems to be something that doesn't align with what you think would be an engagement with the community that's fulsome enough. If you don't want to wait till December, at least you get it out there, and then we could share something, and that correspondence, for the sake of the community could then be listed on our council correspondence list so that it's public. And then you will have a better, because then those issues may be something they factor into their second FAQ update, which is supposed to be, as I mentioned, next week.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'd be good with something like that.
I'd move that if we could do that.
Okay.
The only thing that I'd like to add is if we could spread that from not just the Dufferin municipalities, but if we could also send that to Sylvia Jones, as well as Doug Ford's office, as well as Stephen Maches.
Okay. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Guichardi? All right. Any other discussion? Okay. All in favor? That's carried. All right. And then depending upon what comes through next week, I mean, nothing precludes us from sending something further down the road before January, but okay. No, I think that's a good start. All right. Any notices of motion for tonight? No? Okay. On to communications. Items 5, 6, and 7 were 3 resolutions coming out of the county, which I would like to throw our support behind if we could. We could deal with them individually or as a group. I'm fine moving them sort of all as a group. Councillor Bernardo?
Actually, I had them on my list with a few other ones, but I had them as well. I was going to bring forward, so I'll second that motion. I want to support it. Definitely.
Okay. All right, so we'll lump 5, 6, and 7 together as a group. Any discussion on those? All in favor? That's carried. Okay. Councillor Bernardo, you had some others?
Yeah, number 10, it's a motion from Wawa regarding the methods of training for water and sewer certification. I'd like to support their motion as well. There should be additional methods where staff can be trained and get their certification. And right now it's not as available as it could be. So that's the reason for supporting that.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Councillor Fegan? All right, all in favor? It's carried.
If I can continue, number 11, the Township of McKellar and the City of Owen Sound regarding changes to the legislation allowing for digital, especially where there are no newspapers, where they're allowed to put out notifications for provincial regulations. That is another method that, if it is allowed, it's good for us as well, even though we do have a newspaper. So at this point in time, we may lose it somewhere in the future, so we'll be in the same boat as them. So allowing for digital notification of provincial regs, I'd like to make a motion of support for that.
Okay, and seconder for that one? Councillor Fegan? All right, all in favor? It's carried.
And my final one is municipality number 12. I can't say that, Soch, whatever it's close to. I don't pronounce it right. It doesn't matter how I try. And it's in regards to Jake breaks, asking the province to have more inspections on the big rigs regarding broken mufflers or mufflers that make unnecessary noise, especially with Jake breaks coming into the municipalities. We have a lot of big rigs coming through. Sometimes they have mufflers that aren't functioning the way they should be, and they should have more inspections on those mufflers and the systems that use big breaks. So I'd like to make a motion for that particular motion.
All right, seconder for that one? Councillor Fegan? All right, all in favor? It's carried. All right, anything else? Councillor Gashardi?
Just quickly, do we want to take a look at number 8 in regard to the 3-day festival planned in Mulmer? There will certainly be a lot of youth attending that from other municipalities. Not sure if that's something we want to support. Mulmer's decided to not support that event for obvious reasons, and from garbage and waste to expenses incurred by the municipality. And I'm not sure if that is something that we want to get behind as well.
Yeah, I read that too, and I don't think they're actually looking for support at this point. I think it was just more of a notification as a courtesy to a neighboring municipality that the council in Mulmer is not supportive of it.
Right.
But I think at this point, my suggestion would be let's just keep our eye on it if there's any further development. But at this point, I think it's kind of a non-issue.
Okay.
But I agree with all of your concerns. Absolutely. Anything else? Oh, okay. Can I have a motion then to receive the remaining items under communications? Councillor Sample, seconded by Councillor Wagner. All in favor? That's carried. And a motion for our confirming bylaw. Deputy Mayor Hall, seconded by Councillor Bonato. All in favor? Carried. And a motion to adjourn. Councillor Sample, seconded by Councillor Bonato. All in favor? Carried. All right. Well,